League baseball? Because those are the types of questions you're going to be asked. Now, if all of you read the newspaper like you did every day, you'd have no problem with this. And that's the kind of stuff you need to know. You need to write the written exam. They're going to ask you a question like that. They're also going to ask you to write a story, a news story. Does anybody know how to write news stories right now? Anybody practicing? Okay. Has anybody written anything for anybody? Any magazines? Start now. Start writing. Go write for the Carillon. Go in there, volunteer, and ask if you can write some stories for the Carillon. Learn how to write those stories. Build up your portfolio, your clippings. Because when you get to the interview, they're going to ask you that question. Have you done any freelance work? Yeah, I've done lots. Here's my clippings. Pull out your little file and you show them your stories that are printed off here and there. And they like that. Go down to Access Communications now. Go down there and volunteer. Learn how to use the cameras. Work on a show. See, you're preparing yourself for that. That's part of your career plan. And you need to do that in order to, if you want to get out of here, if you want to get into journalism school. So that's why we write things down. And we go, okay, we're going to do this first. We're going to do this, this, and this, which will lead to that. And once we get to that, then we can start maybe doing this or that. Okay, so no grades lower than 70% at university. Okay, there's only one term paper that I remember from my university days. I've written probably about 50 of them, but there's only one term paper that I remember. All the other term papers, to me, I just did it to get the grade and that. But there was one paper that I remembered, and why I remembered it was because it had a profound impact on me, and it was a moment that I'll never forget. It was a history class. We go in there and we have a quiz, 10 to 15 question quiz. So gives us the quiz, we write the quiz down, we hand it in, we come back, and he gives us the papers back. At the end of the class, my prof comes up to me and he says, Mervin, he points to this one question that I had 0 on. I didn't even bother answering it. And he says, of all the people in the class, I thought you would be the one who would get this question right. And I said, well, why is that? And he says, well, this man here, F.O. Loft, do you not know who that is? We talked about him. Well, I probably wasn't paying attention, or maybe I missed the class. But anyway, I said, okay, so I opened the book and I read a paragraph. Turns out Fred Ogilvie Loft is the founder of the League of Indians, which is the precursor to the Assembly of First Nations. He's a man that we all should know who it is. So I read his brief little story there, and I looked at the prof and I said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write my next paper on this man to make up for the fact that I got to 0 on his question. So I went out and did my research and I wrote the paper on this guy. And it was quite interesting, this man's story. It turns out that he joined the army, World War I, because he wanted to get off the reserve, because at the time Indians weren't allowed to leave the reserve. He goes over to England, and there he meets other First Nations soldiers, and they started talking from across Canada. They started talking, and all of their experiences on the reserve were similar. They had an oppressive Indian agent, a reserve system that provided 0 benefits to them. They were pretty much, in a concentration camp on reserve. I know some people get all offended when you say that, but that's the way it was. So so he started talking with them, and he decided, I'm going to set up an appointment with the Privy Council in England. That's a body that overlooks countries like Canada at the time. And when he met with the Privy Council, he made his arguments, and he told them what life was like for First Nations people, and they said, we emphasize with you, Mr. Loft, however, we can't do anything because you're an individual. We don't really listen to individual or hear individual concerns. What we do though is collective groups. If you represented a collective group, then we would come and we'd be able to hear your presentation and possibly, make some recommendations for change or impose change. So he went back to Canada and he decided that he was going to organize. So he started organizing. His organizing took him to the formation of the League of Indians, which he came out west and he was meeting local bands secretly, of course. And at this time, a young man in Saskatchewan by the name of John B. Tutusis sat in on one of those meetings, and Loft inspired Tutusis to do the same here in Saskatchewan. Tutusis started doing that, going around meeting people, organizing meetings, and they formed the Union of Saskatchewan Indians, which in turn became the FSIN. The FSIN started in the 70s building institutions, SIFC one of them, which is now the First Nations University of Canada. That's our history. That's why I remember that paper, because it all made sense to me about how we started out. And it was one guy, an idea. Okay, so specialize in your classes. Find a subject that you like to do. What's your interest? What kind of subjects do you like to write about? What are you really interested in? That you think will benefit your career somewhere down the line? Mine is First Nation history. I like First Nation history. A lot of my papers that I wrote about were historic pieces.
For me, I like English. I just like the stories and poems and stuff like that.
Like the class English, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So specialize in that subject of English. Between now and the time you convocate, gear all your papers towards a certain area. Develop some expertise, so that someday when you're in an office environment, newsroom, corporate office, whatever, you're the person people are going to go to with their writings. Can you please edit this for me? Can you please look at this for me? Tell me about this. Help me with my papers, with my assignment. Have a look at this. Read it over. You'll become the grammar expert, the expert on writing, and the expert on English. Okay. Anybody else have a? Yeah.
Well, I've never even thought of going to school for journalism, but I knew that I always loved writing. I used to make up my own stories as a child and stuff like that. So I really liked writing. But when I came here, that's when I kind of got introduced to the INCA program, and it opened up my eyes into. I love dealing with First Nations issues and thinking of ways how to resolve certain things that we're going through as our people are going through in this day and age. So that's one of the directions I want to go towards is working with First Nations people and how to resolve some of the things that we're going through, foster homes, and I myself was in a foster home when I was little, so a lot of problems that we face today is the direction that I would like to go towards to try to help and think of ways to resolve.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I'd be directed at.
Find something in there.
Yeah.
And develop expertise on that.
Yeah.
Become the expert in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Raven, do you have anything?
Like writing? What I like to write about?
Well, what's your interest? Is it sports? Is it historic issues?
Theater and music.
Okay. So then start reviewing movies. Start reviewing music that's coming out.
Oh, reviews.
Reviews. Become a critic. Take some some music history classes. These are really tough. I thought they would be a walk in the park, and that's why I signed up for it. And I get in there and I'm like, holy cow, man, this is tough. Those are seriously intense classes with lots of information to try to internalize and process. You got to be on the ball there. But develop that expertise, so that way, when you hand out your resumes, you know, people say, "Oh, you know, you're quite the writer, and you write really honest and thorough reviews." We like that. I knew a guy at the Edmonton Journal, and he just had a voice for this kind of stuff, writing reviews and music and that. And I just loved reading his stuff because he was such a good writer, and his insight was really well written, and his voice. When I say voice in your writing, and people understand what it means when you have a voice in your writing. It means that you finally found, you know, how to express yourself. It takes a long time to develop that voice for some people. Some people it's a natural gift. What expertise do you?
We're between two, but I'm leaning towards one of them in particular, arts and entertainment. But the one I'm leaning more towards more is weather.
Weather. Okay. So weather is an interesting one because it's changing. No longer are weather people standing in front of a blue screen pointing, you know, to something that's not there, but it's on TV. You know, it's more changing now, especially with technology. You know, I on my phone I had a weather app. I just hit that to see where I'm going, and you know, and it's all there for me. So how do you become an expert at that now? You know, those are the challenges that you're facing with this new technology. Huh? You know, same thing with what everybody's doing here is, you know, with Twitter.